Hey, so today we're fortunate to have with us Adam Schmidt. Adam Schmidt is Government Relations Director at J. Grimbliss Associates in Concord, and Adam is our chief lobbyist at the State House. And welcome, Adam.
Thank you very much, Bob.
First time on the podcast.
First time on any podcast, Bob.
Of course. So, as many folks are certainly aware, big election last November. There were some changes at the State House with the governor and in both the House and the Senate. How are those changes, do you think, going to impact the New Hampshire Association of Realtors and our efforts over there?
Oh, that's a good question, Bob. I think heading into it, I don't anticipate a lot of changes for the actual association for a number of reasons. One, who's in the legislature doesn't typically change what we focus on over there. It's ensuring that we have a favorable regulatory structure for the members. We're ensuring that we're doing everything we can to protect private property rights. And typically those issues aren't partisan. We have plenty of supporters on both sides of the aisle. So I don't think what we do over there will change much based upon the election. Obviously, who we do it with has changed, as you mentioned. But generally, our issues are, they're not overtly partisan, and the association's worked hard through the years to find ways to work with both parties with I would argue, a fair amount of success.
So during the election, housing became a big issue, one of the major issues and topics discussed by those running for governor and state offices. But there are a lot of other issues out there as well in terms of the next legislature is going to be trying to tackle and deal with. What are some of those issues that they're going to be looking at?
I think clearly the biggest one in the next issue will be the state budget. It always is, especially in the first year of the biennium. You have a new governor coming in. She's of the same party as the outgoing governor, so that probably makes it a little bit easier for that transition to occur. But when you think about it, Governor Ayotte will be sworn in early January, and she'll have to turn around a budget in about 5 or 6 weeks to introduce in the legislature. So if you ask somebody to develop a spending plan of, 15, 16, 17 billion dollars in a matter of 6 weeks, that's a tall order. And I think the challenge for this particular budget is most of those federal funds that we've been receiving for the last few years have gone away. Various tax cuts will be fully implemented, so there'll be less revenue for the state to spend on things. And some of the tax returns appear to be lagging behind, which is something we haven't had happen over the last several years. We've had a very strong economy. We've had big surpluses for the last several budgets. So it could be a more challenging budget than we've had in the last several years, and that will dominate, I think, the discussion at the State House this next year. Is are they able to meet the needs that the people in New Hampshire expect without creating new taxes or more spending? So it'll be a very interesting debate, I think, throughout the next session.
So over the past several years, the state's invested quite a bit of money in housing. We had the Invest New Hampshire program. Additional dollars were going into the Affordable Housing Fund, which is managed by the New Hampshire Housing Finance Authority, and some other new programs having to do with housing. But with the challenges that are occurring in the state with its budget, it's going to be a little more difficult for some of those appropriations. Is that fair?
I think it's very fair, and I don't think that there's a lack of interest in continuing those investments by the legislature. I just think it's going to be at this point, it appears it'll be more of a resource-constrained environment than it has been the last several years. So I'm sure they'd all love to spend that same amount of money, if not more. I just don't know if those dollars will be there yet. So great programs, significant investments, record-breaking investments, really, in housing in this state anyway. I just don't know if the money will be there for them to replicate it. Hopefully it is, but at this point, it doesn't appear that would be the case.
So as we're trying to tackle housing inventory at the State House, dollars may be tough, but they're not the only way that the state can sort of spur increase in inventory. Obviously, the end of last session, one of the big topics that was being discussed was accessory dwelling units and expanding the existing law. How do you see maybe the next legislature treating issues such as the ADU and other efforts to spur housing?
I think the ADU is a perfect example of the type of housing policy you'd hope the legislature would turn more towards. most ADUs, they're financed by the homeowner. They are not reliant on any money from the state. It is adding additional inventory to a market that desperately needs it, if not so much for that actual ADU, but typically, as you know, I put one on my house recently, and my mom moved from her home to our home, which added her home back into that inventory in a state where we really needed it. So policies like that, where you enable a private property owner to help solve this problem, I think would be the best bang for the buck for the legislature in the near term, in that there's a lot of private sector dollars out there who may be sitting on the sidelines due to land use regulations, due to uncertainty about the marketplace, whatever it is. I think the best way for the legislature to help create those units we need so desperately are try to minimize those things, those risks, those barriers that may exist now, and let the private market help solve our problems. In addition to obviously the meaningful public sector dollars that go into it. But if those public sector dollars are short, time to call on, I think, the private market to help solve some of these things. And ADUs are a classic example of that. Other policies that would help along that lines, I think that'd be meaningful.
Yeah. Well, last time I looked, there were over 1,000 bills that have been introduced in this session. So there'll be a lot of discussions and conversations down the street at the State House over the next couple of months, and we look forward to having you back to give us an update on issues impacting the real estate industry.
Well,